Thank you, Allison. Hi there. For those of you that are joining us right now, my name is David Sokolowski, and I am an individual gifts officer here at SUM, and you are joining us for our last SUM community conversation of the year. And before we get started in a few minutes, we have some other people that are still logging on. I want to encourage you at the bottom of your screen, there is a question and answer box. Just hit that. If you have any questions that come up over the next 55 minutes, please drop those in. And also in the chat box, before we get started, I'd love to know what you're doing for the holiday. I know for me, I'm staying here and making my famous ambrosia holiday salad, which I know all my coworkers can't wait for me to make. But let us know what you're doing for the holiday. It's right around the corner. We're very grateful that you're here today with us. We will go ahead. The session, I also want to let you know, is being recorded today. And I want to welcome our CEO, Ralph Boyd. And also we're joined today by Troy Swanda, who is our Chief Operating Officer. And the topic today, as you know, is affordable housing, the SUM's affordable housing program. And why don't we just go ahead and get started? And Ralph, the first question is for you. As you know, I've been here with SUM for the last 6 months, and before we were planning for this panel today, I did kind of a deep dive on what is affordable housing, and there seem to be different definitions. So can you kind of give us a summary of how affordable housing is defined before we do a deep dive into the topic?
Sure, David, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for the question, David. So the smart aleck answer is the answer to what is affordable housing really depends on context and who's asking. Whether it's a conversation among government agencies, most particularly the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, whether it's real estate development professionals talking, whether it's the media writing, or whether it's nonprofit providers having a conversation. But let me lay it out this way. So HUD's technical definition of affordable housing is housing for people whose income is 30% or less of area median income, AMI as we refer to it. So 0 to 30% of AMI, HUD considers to be affordable. The low income housing tax credit program, which is a government financing program that provides proceeds from tax credits to provide an equity layer of financing for the construction and development of affordable housing. To qualify for the LIHTC program as an affordable developer, the income tranche there is 0 to 60% of AMI. But the common understandings, common parlance, when we refer to affordable housing, typically we're talking about 0 to 80% of AMI, which is generally considered to be low-income affordable housing. Then 0 to 50% of AMI is typically considered to be very low. And then 0 to 30% of AMI is affordable housing at the extreme low end of the income spectrum. For SUM's purposes, that's the most significant definition because that's where our preponderant focus is for our housing program. That's HUD's sweet spot. We have a mix of affordable housing in our portfolio that Troy's been one of the principal architects over time, but the preponderance of our units in our portfolio really focus on that extremely low income tranche of 0 to 30% of AMI. So when we talk about affordable housing, that's at SUM, that's usually what we're talking about, but we do have units both in existence and probably will develop units over the course of the next 5 years. During the course of our 5-year strategic plan, our new 5-year strategic plan, we'll have some units that are 0 to 80% or up to 80% of AMI in the mix. So a diverse mix, but a real focus and sweet spot for the 0 to 30, which is the most vulnerable part of the population, which is kind of a sum's raison d'etre, if you will, in all of our lines of service.
Thank you so much. So now that we have an idea that, some is focusing on that 0 to 30, that most vulnerable population for housing. Troy, can you tell us, I know that you have served, before you're in the role you're in now, you were the housing director and really put the foundation for a lot of these pieces together. And some has actually been in the affordable housing space since, I believe, 89. Mm-hmm. And we've gone from like 92 housing units to actually 1,300 today. How did that start 30 years ago? And how did we get from 92 units to 1,300 today?
Thank you, David. That's and I wouldn't want to take credit for laying that foundation, because 32 years ago, starting with Shalom House, certainly Father John and Richard Gerlach and Emily Van Loon, I think, along with Jack Griffin, who wasn't a SUM staff person, but was a SUM supporter and was a real estate developer. I've always considered that beginning, that Shalom House, as SUM's most significant achievement, because at that time, it really was a soup kitchen developing an affordable housing, a 40,000 square foot, 94 unit program, multi-million. It was one of the first tax credit, low-income housing tax credit deals in the country. The law had just allowed for that. And just for context, the pricing at that time was around 50 cents. Today, we get about $1 per tax credit. So it's a much more effective financing tool. But those early days, people were really inventing it. It was also one of the first programs to use the tenant assistant program, which was a DC operating subsidy for people in affordable housing. And that's gone away, but it's been replaced by the local rent supplement program, which has been very effective for us over time. But so anyway, we didn't have that track record that we have now at that time. So getting Shalom House open was quite an achievement, and that opened in 1989. And then following that, it's been hugely successful. We've had hundreds of people over the years live in Shalom House, and we actually have a couple of the original tenants still living there, who I think their their quality of life would have been dramatically decreased over these last 30 years without that safe and supportive environment. So it's been hugely successful, and we've learned a lot of lessons from that humble beginning. The first operating model was to have nuns. Shalom House had nuns that operated it. They lived in 4 of the units on site. And so there's some difficulties in living where you work. And so that model quickly changed. But so following Shalom House, we developed Anna Cooper and Jeremiah House. Anna Cooper's in Logan Circle, and Jeremiah House is near RFK Stadium. Those are both 50-unit single room occupancy buildings, and they used the mod rehab SRO program that was in existence at that time. And again, those are hugely successful, and they've just recently become preservation projects now for some. We were able to preserve affordable housing at Anna Cooper by redeveloping it. We just did a major rehab on it and reopened it for tenants, and we're going to do the same for Jeremiah House in the next year or two. So following the opening of Anna Cooper and Jeremiah House, some actually turned its attention away from affordable housing. At that time, there was, believe it or not, more naturally occurring affordable housing in DC. And there was other ways that some wanted to augment its continuum of services. So we added our Maya, for instance, our Maya Angelou House, which is our substance use disorder treatment program for women out in West Virginia. We added our Center for Employment Training in the late 90s. Some developed the space that we're in now, 60 O Street, which has augmented our medical and dental clinic and added our behavioral health services. So we were busy with program addition during that time following or after 1992. But then in 2005, the board and the staff realized it, of course, as well, the growing scarcity of affordable housing. And they set out to significantly expand the portfolio of single adult, senior, and family housing. And we didn't really have much family housing at that time, only 12 transitional units for families. And it was important to them too, for people that have gone through our continuum of services, either our mental health programs or our substance use disorder programs, that they'd have a place to live following that and maintain that positive trajectory and maintain those outcomes that they'd achieve. So getting started then in late 2004, early 2005 with the initiative to develop 1,000 new units. It was difficult getting started. At that time, we were competing with a lot of condo developers. Everybody thought they could make a quick dollar in the early 2000s with real estate development. So it was hard to compete for properties. We were able to secure a couple of smaller sites. And this is when we came up with our financing scheme. We've used a couple of times since, our scattered site financing structure, where we combine some properties and then use a tax exempt bond and 4% low income housing tax credit financing structure. It gets some economies of scale into the way that we were able to do that development. And so we had combined 5 properties for 250 total units, and we're set to close in 2008. And we had to wait until October for the district financing for the district fiscal year. And Ralph will probably say this is the understatement of the year, but there was a financial crisis at late 2008, you may recall, and that derailed that scattered site financing from closing. And so that we lost a whole year as a result of that to get back open. So it has never been easy. We've been fortunate in a lot of ways, some has, but it's never been easy necessarily to get these deals done. And so that was a hiccup, but we ultimately opened all of those sites, and we've used that financing structure on scattered site 2, scattered site 3. The sequels keep getting better, and so we've done both properties, or both of those are around 100 unit properties, and we've done some additional deals as single financing structures. And then in 2012, it was another big moment for some. We started work on our structuring the Conway Center, which was going to incorporate 182 units of affordable housing, in addition to a new space for our Center for Employment Training, a medical clinic that's operated by Unity Healthcare, some office space, our additional behavioral health services for Ward 7, and transitional housing for people coming out of our treatment program. And that was a big focus until we opened it in 2018. And I think we'll talk a little bit further about where the path is ahead. But that was, from humble beginnings, but a lot of dedicated people to get it done. And now we have some advantages in terms of having a team built out and the finance structure in place and so forth, and a lot of people that support us to get to where we are now.
Well, thank you for that history there. One of the things that I became aware of when I came to work here at SUM was that our affordable housing program is different than other affordable housing programs here in the district. And Ralph, this question's for you. Tell us how the affordable housing program, besides just providing housing, what else does that entail to support an individual or family that needs affordable housing or is coming out of experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, David. So we're very at SUM opportunistic and try to set people up for success. And we understand that our housing platform is not only an opportunity to provide safe, stable shelter for individuals and families, but it's also a great platform to provide services for them, critical human services and healthcare services. We know from our 50 years, over 5 decades of experience, we know anecdotally, we know from that experience, but we also know from the research data that the most effective and efficient ways to deliver critical services, social services, healthcare services to vulnerable people is through the platform of affordable housing. People who are sheltered can be communicated with in a much more fluid, constant, consistent way. Services can be provided through the housing platform. And so it just works better all the way around. In addition to providing shelter, it's also a vehicle for providing services. So all of SUM's housing comes with what we describe as, and is generally described as in the industry, as supportive services. And those supportive services are designed to do what we like to say in a really pithy way that we do here at SUM, to save lives, improve lives, and transform lives, families, and the communities in which folks reside. So what that means is residents of SUM housing have access to all of our lines of service, all of our human service lines and healthcare lines, our healthcare and therapeutic services, our medical clinics, our dental clinics. They're also have access to our behavioral health clinics. Troy referenced earlier our substance use disorder continuum, addiction treatment programs, financial literacy, academic programs for children in our family housing units. We deal with food insecurity through our housing platforms, through our single adult services, our family services, and our senior services. So anyone in our housing has access to that range of services, and those services are connected to our residents with through a case management model. So residents, whether it's a single adult living in our single adult housing, whether it's a family in our family housing, or a senior in our senior housing, has a case manager whose responsibility it is to work with that resident and figure out what are the range of services that we can provide that meet an obvious need that the person or the family has. And so that case management model occurs in the context of healthcare, but also occurs in the context of the social services we provide. So people should think of our housing as, yes, we are housing people, but it is also the conduit, the vehicle for our case management model to essentially provide that entire range of supportive, critical services that someone who is vulnerable in one way or another would need to reach a place of sufficiency in their lives and in the lives of their families. So again, housing is for shelter, but it's also to provide all of these additional services utilizing case management. And going forward, we'll be talking about our whole person care model going forward. And that is really tied to what you see happening already, but just in a more robust and enhanced way. On the screen, you can see all the different services and programs that SUM provides as a part of this supportive model. The whole person care approach is designed to look at anybody who hits our platform, particularly our housing platform, be able to look at them and say, in addition to housing them safely and stably, what are the other range of services and programs that we can provide that will help them improve and transform?
Excellent. I think you described that so well. It's exactly, helping someone with shelter is just the first step of building that foundation. And those wraparound services are key for an individual or family.
It's very difficult, David, to get services to people who are unhoused. And we know, because we're very good at doing that, but it is way more challenging than to provide that range of services that people need to stabilize themselves and get on an upward trajectory when they are permanently housed.
Yeah. So let me transition into this question. Obviously, before the pandemic and then coming out of the pandemic, we saw a huge run up, not just here, but across the country, and home prices. There's definitely, we've seen rents starting to rise again, not just in DC as people have come back into the big cities, but across the country. And I know that, since I've lived in the district, there's just been, talk of affordable housing and how does this all work? And I know that the government, the DC government has really placed this as a top priority. So Ralph and Troy, this is for both of you. How, where do we as an organization fit in with the mayor's affordable housing plan that she's outlined to 2025? Where does some fit in that?
Troy, you want to let me take the first crack at that, and then you fill in with a bit more detail? So the good news is that notwithstanding so many challenges we have in the district in this context and others, the mayor has a plan with very ambitious, and I would say appropriately aggressive affordable housing goals. The overarching plan for multifamily housing, according to the mayor's goals and objectives, is to have 36,000 units of multifamily housing, that is across the different market spectrum, from affordable to market rate to luxury housing, to add 36,000 units of multifamily housing stock by 2025, by the end of 2025. Of those 36,000 units, the mayor has targeted 12,000 of those units be affordable units. And we understand that to be up to 80% of AMI qualified units. Of that 12,000 units of affordable housing stock, the mayor's goals focus on 4,000 of those units would be targeted for the extremely low income part of the affordable tranche. And that's some sweet spot. That's the 0 to 30% of AMI. So it's 36,000 units overall, 12,000 affordable, that's 0 to 80% of AMI, and 4,000 in that extremely low income tranche, which is, again, not exclusively our housing, but that's the preponderance of the housing that we currently provide, and will be the overwhelming preponderance of what we provide, what we develop going forward. Troy and I have worked closely with our senior leadership team in putting together a new 5-year strategic plan, and of the 7 significant goals and objectives in that plan is for us to get our unit count to 2,000 by 2026. You mentioned it earlier, David, we currently have about 1,300 units broadly defined in our portfolio, either in operation or under construction or in some advanced stage of pre-development. However, that would mean adding about around plus or minus 700 units over the course of the next 5 years. Since we finished the plan, between our appreciation for the capital that we think we're able to raise and the talent we have to actually do the development and access potential properties for our portfolio for development, we think, the goal is to get to 2,000. We think it's not crazy for us to try to add 1,000 units and get to about 2,300. The goal is 700, but we think we could make 1,000. So the way to think about that in context is our plan in 2000, strategic plan in 2005, 2006 was to build 1,000 units in 10 years. And now we're going to build 1,000 more in 5 with I don't know if I should say a capital plan, but a capital approach to do it. And so far, so good. Things have gone well, and Troy is finding himself spending a lot of his day populating our property acquisition pipeline so that we can start to move on some of this while, as we would say, the capital's kind of hot. The capital is there to do it.
Yeah. Great.
So the way to think about it is if we do 1,000, some alone is a quarter of the mayor's goals for the extremely low income tranche. So we make reference to this in the strategic plan, if the mayor's going to hit her goals, we have to hit ours. It would be very hard for her to reach her affordable goal in that extremely low income tranche if we don't hit ours. I'll say that. The other thing I'll say, the other aspect of the mayor's plan that's often overlooked, but I think is significant, is the mayor's plan calls for adding affordable units in each of the wards of the city, not simply concentrating units in Ward 7 and Ward 8. Certainly there will be a lot of unit development there, but the mayor wants units developed in Wards 3, Wards 4, Wards 5. And as Troy and the housing development team are now putting together another scattered site project for development, happy to say, at least so far in that plan, there are units scheduled for Ward 7 and 8. And 3 and 4, and I think 5, Troy?
Yeah. I think that shows the Mayor Bowser's and the city councils, they have a dedication to helping people see affordable housing as part of a healthy community. You need a healthy stock of affordable housing spread throughout the city. And I give them a lot of credit for not just saying that we need it, but they've allocated the resources to do it with the Housing Production Trust Fund and local rent supplement. And so that's made it possible for those developments to become a reality. So
Troy, if I can add, so for our those who are on the podcast, the webcast, what Troy's referring to is the mayor's allocated and gotten from the feds $400 million for the Housing Production Trust Fund. So that is a layer in the financing, the capital stack that we and other affordable housing developers would use to build these units. That's critically important. That's the development dollars, but the local rent supplement program is an operating subsidy. So once they're built and occupied, part of the subsidy of those rents that covers that significant portion of the market rent that low-income tenants don't have to pay is covered by that local rent supplement program. So when you're doing this affordable housing development and then owning and operating the units and providing services, you need the capital to build it. That's the Housing Production Trust Fund money, but you also need operating subsidies. That's the local rent supplement program. And so the city is capitalized both in a pretty robust way.
Yep.
Thank you. And I'm really glad we added the renderings.
David, I would say one more thing too, and I think this is important. We make reference to this in our strategic plan. If you look at any other city in America, the mayor's affordable housing goals are as ambitious as anywhere. There's no place that has more ambitious goals than the District of Columbia has. What's also interesting is when we talk about the mayor's desire to disperse those units of affordable housing across all of the wards and communities of the city, Troy made this point. It's an important one. It's because accessible housing is everybody's business, no matter which community you live in. But in addition to that, it prevents the reality and the optic that the District of Columbia is resegregating in a socio-racial and socioeconomic way. And so the idea of that dispersion of affordable housing is we don't want a resegregated city. And we don't want over concentrations of any particular kind of housing. We want that diverse spread throughout the city. Yeah. Obviously, the ratios will be different, clearly, depending on where you are, but we want representation of of affordable and market rate housing across all the wards.
All right. And that kind of ties in with a question that one of the folks who's with us today just sent me. How does some choose its locations to buying housing or building housing, and what parts, what do we look for as far as locations? Like, are we looking for supermarkets, close to the metro?
But Troy's the expert on this. I'll let him answer it. I'll just say there's such competition for land in the district today. When we can get land, we go get it. But go ahead, Troy. It's a little more thoughtful than that, but sometimes it is that.
Yeah, it's a little more thoughtful, but the opportunity does need to be there in something for sale. So that's the first requirement. But the sites that we're compiling now, again, we are spreading those out over a number of wards, but they also all happen to be within a half mile of a metro. And so that doesn't always get to happen, but we were happy that that's going to be the case on this upcoming development. When we're looking at what the zoning is and what we're able to do, we each have certain requirements that we want to get to in terms of unit count to make the staffing and so forth efficient. So at least 25 family units, for instance, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom apartments is our family units, and then for our single adults, somewhere 50 plus. And so this type of building and what the zoning allows for is one of the key components. And then can we afford it? Is there a path forward in terms of the financing? And one of the pieces we haven't talked about a lot is the donor component for some has been significant in terms of what we're able to add to that capital stack, and it makes takes some of the pressure off in terms of coming up with the city financing, and makes us competitive in terms of being able to get those other dollars. So it's a key component, but there needs to be some clear path forward before we'd be able to buy a site that we'd be able to finance it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when the city is scoring who they want to dole out dollars from the Housing Production Trust Fund and who gets a low-income housing tax credit allocation, there are lots of things they look at, but we have fared well in those ratings and those allocations, largely because of our focus on the 0 to 30%. That is a very big issue for the district. Also because there is a meaningful component in every one of our capital stacks that's donor dollars. So what it says to the city when it's allocating its credits and its dollars is that some stakeholders are really not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. They have skin in the game. And then the other piece is to develop as much as we can near transit stations, near metro stations, so folks begin to have access to get to jobs that, again, using our supportive services, which includes employment training, among other things, makes it more valuable. So when we're looking for property, our opportunity to get the property and afford to buy the property and get the equity and the subsidies from the District of Columbia are really helped by all those things that I mentioned. But the thing I would underscore is our donors have been a critical part of that capital stack.
Absolutely. So we have a question from Charlotte, and her question is, how much money is in the Housing Production Trust Fund? She had missed that amount that you had said.
400 million.
400 million.
400 million.
All right.
And just to be, that's a higher than normal allocation, for this particular year, but the district has put a lot of resources into keeping that number above 100 million per year to the district for the last at least 6 or so years. And there's a lot of political will to make that happen.
To give you some context for that number, to kind of show how high that number is, I have family in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a similarly sized city. In fact, it's a population-wise a little bigger than the district, more spread out. But their equivalent of our housing production trust fund was trumpeting recently that they were going to be allocating about 25 million. So you can see the multiple in DC.
Huge, yeah, huge difference, huge. Let's see, any other questions? Floor is open. Let me see here.
David, while you're looking, if I can make a comment about something Troy said. So when Troy was talking about the distribution and the diversity of the units that we build, he made reference to 2 and 3 and 4 bedroom family units. That's one of the wonderful things about our housing program is those family units in the affordable development space. We don't have a lot of them, but we have a meaningful number of 3 and 4 bedroom units. That's almost unheard of in the affordable 4 bedroom anything in the non-luxury space is almost unheard of, but in the affordable housing space, it is a very unique product, yet we have it and it's in the mix for our new planned developments. I talked about Troy's putting together a new scattered site project right now. It includes several units of 3 and 4 bedroom, which also works well because it demonstrates what we refer to as our housing continuum. So I talked about, 0 to 30% is our sweet spot, but we're opportunistic and have a mix of options. One of our options that we're looking to grow in our strategic plan is our accelerated housing program, which is a program that takes vulnerable families in, provides all those supportive services, emphasizing things like financial literacy, employment consistency, and all those things, and eventually tracks them on a path to home ownership. So when they graduate from the accelerated housing program, they're moving from our highly subsidized housing to units that they will then own.
Wow. So to bring things kind of down for a landing, Ralph, can you summarize how the people that are on the call, our donors and community partners, how they can get involved with this?
So some folks have heard me say this only about 1,000 different times, but it's the biblical admonition: time, treasure, talent. We're greedy. We want all, we need and want all of it and advocate for all of it. So people can participate financially by making periodic donations, whether it's Giving Tuesdays, whether it's annual giving. Those dollars go to our programs and our operations. We will be, no, she should be launching this prematurely, but at some point in the not too distant future, we will be launching a capital campaign to provide foundational capital for so much of what we talk about in the strategic plan. And a big part of that is bricks and mortar for the housing that we're talking about, the additional 1,000 units, but also to do other things like build out our IT infrastructure. So as we implement and enhance that whole person model of care, we actually have the technology to do what we say we plan to do and aspire to do, which is somebody hits our platform and we can then look at them and see all the different things, other services and programs that we can provide. So certainly making a financial investment. We talk about giving and donors, but we're in the business of creating human gain, human improvement, and folks who participate financially in that we view as investors. Donors, yes, but when you just give somebody something, there's not necessarily an expectation of a return. You invest $1 in some, you should expect a greedy return. You should expect some multiple of human gain that will generate based on that dollar. So you put $1 into us, you shouldn't get $1 of human gain. We want to be Blackstone, Carlyle Group, Goldman Sachs in terms of our return multiple. So that's what we're aiming to do. So financial investment in us. We have almost 10,000 volunteers in a range of ways that people can participate. Troy and I and Daryl Wright, our Vice President for Emergency Services, and his team have been focusing on how do we build out that volunteer platform even more broadly. So there are more ways for people to participate as volunteers, including remotely. And this is also part of our strategic plan to provide volunteer opportunities that allow people to invest in us by giving their time, especially when there is some expertise or subject matter expertise or skill set that they have that we can use as a backup to our operations. So Troy and I recently participated over at the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown with students who had a case competition, and their case competition was basically how do we help some build out more broadly and more robustly their volunteer platform and their volunteer opportunities, and then how do they publicize it and market it and track it and monitor and all that. So bottom line is volunteer. So time, treasure, talent.
So I've got one last question. I just want to touch upon, I think we touched upon it, but it came in here. And that is, if we're going to be expanding housing units geographically in the district, how will those supportive services we talked about, will folks be able to tap into? Will they still have access to those supportive services?
Yes, Troy, I'll let you, I've been running my mouth, I'll let you elaborate on that, but that's a particularly insightful question because it's crazy. But when I was driving in today, I was thinking about how this scattered site model makes that more complicated. So that's actually a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. And we would we always create space for our on-site supportive services. So for the family programs, the after-school programming, for instance, is in the community space or the someplace for kids that we have at each of the sites. And then they're able to do the parenting programs or the money management, those courses on site at the program. So we bring services to the program, but in addition, people can use our core services, either the medical clinic, the dental, the behavioral health services. People coming through the continuum that way often want to still engage in services that way and move ultimately into the housing. So there's a combination of the on-site and the services that would be considered at main sum. But the one thing that's going to be a game changer is the telehealth platform as we're continuing to build that out. And people are able to, meet remotely. And it's actually going to help with the volunteers, I think, as well, that in terms of the after school tutoring for children, I think is going to be a very helpful one for people to be able to make that time, particularly if they're working from home. They might not be able to get into one of our sites, but be able to do it remotely. And I think that's going to be a game changer as well. And that's part of we've done some of that infrastructure build out, and that's part of the strategic plan is to continue making that as robust as possible. But that's a great question.
Yeah, that really is.
Yeah, the telehealth is a game. Troy said it's a game changer. It really is. And I would say, so I arrived at some just at the beginning of the pandemic in April of 2020. And so I take no credit for this at all. But the team built out that telehealth platform in about 60 days in a very functional way, not just building out the functionality, but also working in an integrated way to provide very vulnerable people with access to the technology, whether it's handheld or in a kiosk in our dining center facility or whatever, so that they can access the telehealth platform. So from a conceptual standpoint and an operational, functional standpoint, it was just extraordinary. And I don't think any other organization, whether for profit or not, would be able to build out that robust a telehealth platform that quickly with that level of functionality. And as a consequence of that, we had more inpatient client visits than ever before in the middle of a pandemic. And that's attributable to having that telehealth platform be available as quickly as it was available and get people acculturated to actually using it.
Yeah, thank you. Real quick, folks, before we wrap up, Allison's going to put a poll up. We have some different topics we're already planning for 2022 for our community conversations. And we really want your input. For those of you that are with us today, if you can mark on here, we have a whole list of different topics. If you can prioritize those on what you'd like to hear more about, because we definitely like to stay focused and hear from you so that we can build these donor engagements around topics that you're concerned about. The other thing is it's that time of the year. And if you haven't made your year-end gift, I'm going to put a plug in there. You can reach us by phone. Allison, if you can put our phone number in, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Allison's also going to put that in the chat. If you would like to give a gift over the phone or stock or donor advice fund or IRA, if you don't have that information, give us a quick call and we can get that to you. I want to thank all of you for participating in this today. It was great. I know that I've learned a lot about affordable housing and just preparing for today, and am very happy to be able to work on today's topic and bring that to all of you, and also work closely with Ralph and Troy. And I think you both did a great job. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. So we are going to go ahead and sign off. Have a great, safe, and healthy holiday. We're actually finishing up about 18 minutes before the hour. So enjoy the rest of the day and have a safe holiday. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.